Hello, and welcome to another episode of AWS She Builds Tech Skills here in North America. I'm your host today, Candace Bohannon, and I am joined by one of our core team members, Fatima. So thank you for being here today.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm good, keeping warm. I live in Minnesota, and it is like I think it's up to, oh my gosh, 22 degrees.
Oh,
The heat.
wow. That's really cold.
Yeah. Um,
But we are here with a new topic to talk about. It's about an exciting reInvent release.
yeah.
So let's get started on S3 vectors.
Awesome. Let's do it. Tell the audience a little bit about what you do. You were on a show, I don't remember when, and we talked about
Yeah.
ransomware.
Yes, we did. Quite
What
some time back.
it's been a while. It's all a
It's been a
blur.
while. Yeah.
Tell everyone what you do for your day job.
Sure. So, hi, my name is Fatima Kamal. I'm a principal storage specialist SA. And I work very closely with FSI financial services customers. And what I really do in my day-to-day job is help customer migrate or build data or implement solutions on our AWS storage services portfolio. So there's like 15 different storage services starting from this S3 to different file services to data protection, and which is why I came on the ransomware talk and demo. So that's pretty much what I do on a day-to-day basis.
So S3 is definitely one of my favorite services, just because you can do so much with it, and I love the extra attention we're adding to it
Yeah. So,
lately.
yeah, and S3 is right now scaling to the AI side of the workload too. So a lot of the features that's coming up. Last reInvent was all about S3 tables, where we were integrating it with analytics and helping to migrate Iceberg on general purpose bucket to S3 tables. This reInvent is all about S3 vectors, which is basically the first cloud object store, and it has native support to store and query vectors.
So what does that mean though? Like I kind of know what vectors are, but
Yeah.
explain to the audience what that means and what they're good for.
Sure. So, if I have to break it down, like start from scratch, right? What is a vector? Vector is like and we all have learned this, I think, in middle school. It's an entity in a multidimensional space, and it always has a magnitude and a direction, right? And so, why do we use vectors? It's because it's very easy to calculate the distance between two vectors. So, if I have to like give a very common analogy, think of Prime Day. So when you buy something today, and based on your purchase history, Amazon will start recommending you a bunch of other items for you to purchase, right? That's where vector search is at work. Similar to your Netflix, like when you're browsing for movies, there is a recommendation. That's because there's a vector search behind at play. So that is what how vector is done. What exactly happens is with vectors, there's something called vector embeddings. So your machines can understand words, right? So traditionally it was you put in a keyword for search, but now it is all about semantic search, where you want to find something similar, right? So when you're given a lot of contextual data, you want to find the closest relationship between them, and that is possible when you have vector embeddings, and they have a lot of dimensions, which means like they can range from one to thousands of dimensions, and the more dimensions they have, the easier it is to find semantic representation. And so that is why whenever we want to think about a semantic search, we think about a vector search. And
Okay.
what in the underlying, there is vector embeddings in play, which helps us to figure that out.
Okay, that does make sense. I majored in math back in the day.
Yeah.
So what I kind of heard you say in different words is some of that like you may also like, or this other show that you might like, oh, you like these shoes, you might also like those shoes. All of that
Exactly.
is kind of each of those are a vector. So a product is a vector.
Yes.
My pink hoodie is a vector. My other
Vector.
purple hoodie also a vector, and they're pretty close.
Yes. And they are represented by an array of numbers, not by the word pink hoodie, right?
Right.
Because that's how it's easier. And when you have pink hoodie to my green shirt, they are all an array of numbers. So if they could be apart because there's nothing similar between them. But if there was another pink shirt, they could be slightly closer. So when somebody's asking for a pink shirt or a pink hoodie, then you know which vector to look into.
Awesome. That makes sense. And now we can do that. we have vectors available to us in S3. So S3 is one of the
Yes,
durable and really
highly
inexpensive.
available.
Yeah, highly available. All of these things. It's one of my favorite things. I tend to
Yes,
say I can build almost anything with a bucket and some Lambda functions. Just
yeah.
give it to me. So,
Exactly. Scalable storage, right? So S3 vector is again, I mean, it's introduced as a vector bucket, and S3 vector bucket can now you can use it to store vectors and then query those vectors. Again, everything is in native support, and you can have up to 90% cost and reduction in cost. Sorry, reduction in cost. What that means is if somebody is wanting to use these vector embeddings and it's not and they don't need that tens of milliseconds of latency which traditionally your OpenSearch databases give, and they want to keep it store it for long-term storage, then your S3 vector bucket is your ideal place because they charge you like 6 cents per gig
mm,
to store those vectors.
yeah. So
That's a prime use case.
awesome. That's very inexpensive and
Yeah,
a great choice, it sounds like.
exactly.
Cool.
So, shall we get started? I would like to
Yeah,
show you, what are we doing on the S3 vector? How are we using it to store and query some of the vector embeddings? And how
absolutely.
to actually convert data from an S3 bucket into embeddings and then store it into an S3 vector bucket.
Yeah, I would love to see that. Are you ready to share your screen?
Yes,
Awesome.
in a minute. All right. So what you're seeing is my console, and this is what you're seeing here, where vector bucket is like a new search here, new item here. So when you click on this, you get a thing called create vector bucket. So you can either do it through, your APIs. You can, your S3 API is called an S3 vector API. You can do it through the console, but there's very limited things you can do through the console. All you can do is you can create a bucket. And inside the bucket, I've created a bucket here already, but when you say click on create bucket, let's say you're given a vector bucket name, and that's where you're going to store your vectors, right? I mean, that's the container for storing the indexes. And then your bucket can use encryption. So if you specify the encryption type, it's SSE S3, service managed, or AWS key management service keys, right, with SSE KMS. And that's it. You click on vector bucket, your vector bucket is created. Now what happens is once you create a vector bucket, you want to create a vector index. An index is a place where you want to use again a resource within the vector bucket, but you create a vector index to organize your data. So if you want to put all your movies in an index, you want to put all your books in an index, when you think about organization of your data or your vectors, you're thinking about indexes. And upon yeah, so once you create a vector index, you can pretty much say create a vector index given an index name. And then your dimension. Your dimension is basically what it means is i- the storage in it, right? So if you're giving in a larger dimension, it means it's going to take more storage. Typically, we support up to 1 to 4096, but it is largely depending on your embedding model. So if your embedding model, supports a certain dimension size, that's what you want to enter it in here. So the embedding model is going to convert the data and put the data into this vector index.
So
And go
is
ahead.
is a dimension kind of like the amount of detail you have about a thing? Is
The
that the way to think
the
of it?
numbers you see in those array, it's like how many numbers do you want to see in those array to represent a single object
Got it.
or a
Okay.
product? And then there is the distance metric. So there are two types of metrics that we are using here. One is the cosine. Cosine is when you have two products, right? You want to see what is you determine the angle between the two products to determine the similarity. Mostly for text is what we use cosine. But if you want to do like multimodal images or videos, audios, for images you still use cosine. But if you're using videos, audios, you're talking about Euclidean, where it is a straight line between the two vectors. So that's one of the differentiating factor for S3 vector.
Okay.
Um, And then, you have additional settings where you can do metadata. There are two types of metadata. One is a non-filterable metadata where you can, if you would like to add more context to your vector, but you can filter upon it, right? So um, it- that's what is non-filterable metadata. But there is also filterable metadata. And I'll show you that too in the demo. Filterable metadata is like John, if you're uploading a movie vector index, and you want genre or category, that's your filterable metadata. And then again, encryption is the same. You can use the bucket settings for the encryption, and that creates a vector index. And I'm going to show that via the CLI, right? So I'm going to open Cloud Shell. This is where you open Cloud Shell, and it has to start. So Cloud Shell I'm pretty much using to run the same thing on CLI. So let's get started.
So locally, we could also run this just in our terminal using AWS Bash, AWS CLI.
CLI.
Okay.
That's correct. So if you want to run it locally, make sure you have the credentials and then use your AWS CLI, and you can use the AWS S3 Vector API to run these same commands. So if I have to do this, I'm like saying that AWS S3 vectors, create vector bucket, what we just did. I'm going to call it the workshop bucket and giving it a default encryption and default region. That created a vector bucket. Now, if I have to do the same thing that you saw on the console using the CLI, I'm going to do a vector index. So that's again, whatever I did on the console, I'm doing it via the CLI, right? So I created an index. Now, so my vector bucket is created, my vector index is created, and now I have to see how to prepare a sample data to store and query these vectors, right? So let's say my sample data is in an S3 bucket. I put it here. I put some sample images on my S3 bucket. I have these images called, I've got like three images, like they are like a formal gray checkered shirt, a party shirt, a red checkered shirt, etc. Now these, I need to convert it into embeddings to store into my S3 vector bucket. So how do I do that? So going back here, I have something called an embed CLI, which is actually a custom solution that one of our essays put together. I have, okay, here's a GitHub link.
Sweet.
I'm gonna give you the GitHub link.
I will post it in the chat for anyone who wants to go and look at that. Hopefully I can do that.
Yeah.
But if not, just search for anyone who's watching and curious about that, just search there in GitHub and you should be able to find it as well.
Yeah, so what this does is, typically S3 vector, we'll go through over what S3 vector is integrated with, like Bedrock and OpenSearch. But let's say you have some data on S3, typically all the data is stored in S3, and you need to convert these into vectors and put them in S3 vector bucket because there's no paths for it to be directly done, right? So what we are doing is this particular solution that's built, it's a command. What it can do is it can take the vectors, I'm sorry, the data from the S3 bucket. And here in this one, we are using a Cohere model for the embeddings. It converts them into embeddings and then it stores it into the S3 vector bucket that we created. So in order to do that, we will have to do a pip install of this vectors embed CLI, which I have already downloaded. Now I'm checking if it is, yeah, version is installed. So what I do is I'm going to use that CLI to create the vector embeddings. So first I'm going to all of these. I've provided the, then I'm going to show. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm doing an S3 vectors embed put. So I'm giving, this is the bucket name you're going to put. This is the index name. This is the model ID, which is, I'm going to use Cohere embed English embeddings model version 3. And I'm going to put it here. And this is my bucket, the S3 bucket. So now it's processed the data. It's processed three of those files because you saw in my S3 bucket there are three files, those three images, and it just created embeddings of those and it stored it in my vector bucket. So now that we have converted the data from S3 bucket to into embeddings and store it in an S3 bucket, the next course of action is to query the vector index, right? So right now, what we are trying to showcase here is semantic similarity, right? We are going to do a similarity search. So now I'm going to use the embed query
Okay.
to do query. So what I'm saying is S3 vectors embed query. This is the bucket name. This is the index name. Again, I'm using the Cohere embeddings model. And then also return the distance. When you're giving me the the results, give me the distance because distance is a very key point. What that means is when you have a lower distance, it means the results are semantically closer to the query string provided. And my text value for the query is blue Hawaiian shirt with flowers. So it gave me everything, right? So it said, if I look at the distance, this is 0.46, 0.57, 0.58. And what that means is this is the lowest, which means that this is the file that's closest to what I'm asking for. Now, when I try to open this file, so it says party shirt, right?
Yeah.
So I have all the images here. And if I click on party shirt, that's what I'm getting, right?
Nice
And
party.
this is at a very small level, but think about it in like hundreds and thousands of vectors. You can also say that, how many KNNs you want, case nearest neighbor, if you want just three results or, one result, etc. All of that can be done in your query that you're doing it.
So is this kind of how Amazon works? I'm always on Amazon. That's where I get all my hoodies.
Exactly.
So we just how does that work? Do you chunk it out? Like if you have a large inventory, just maybe not exactly how Amazon works, right? But if we
Yeah.
have a large inventory, what are some techniques you would recommend to optimize this?
So pretty much what you say is, and there's something we'll see it again too. You can define that percentage that a return distance is to. It has to be within this particular return distance for it to be extremely similar because we don't want to showcase something. Let's say I had a skirt in here, right? Right now I have only shirts. If I had a skirt in here and it came in with a higher distance number, return distance number, I don't want that. Instead, I just say that, okay, within this range of return distance, give me like the top three or top five or the top 10. You might want to, further reduce your search results to make sure that you're giving just what the customer is asking for. That's how at a high end it's being done.
Okay, cool.
Um, so next, what we are doing is let's try with a different query result this time. So what
And
we are doing, go
also,
ahead.
just a reminder to anyone who is watching, if you have any other questions, feel free to post those here in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I did that. And that's all I had. Okay. So this is what we have. I've already done this. So this is like a small demo of how you use an S3 vector to store, query. Even if you have your data spread out in multiple S3 buckets, you could use this embed CLI, which is in GitLab, to convert them into vector embeddings and store it and then use it for query. This is a very native form of doing it, right? So now let's talk about the integration of S3 vector with OpenSearch. So if I go in here, my vector bucket is here created. So when I go here, let me just close the Cloud Shell. And then I click on the index. I have all of this data. But before I do that, I can select this index and I say Advanced Search Export. I can export this to OpenSearch. So OpenSearch again, we have where it's a primary one for storing your vector database. Now let's say you want to keep your low-cost vector storage on S3 vector. And if for some reason you want that higher query speed, right? Like you want that query to be in a single digit millisecond latency versus 100, but this is typically at 100 millisecond latency, what we are getting in S3 vector, because the latency is slightly higher. So let's say you have all of this vector in S3 vector bucket, but then there is a need and you need a higher query speed. You can export that index completely to OpenSearch. And now you get lower levels of latency, but what you're doing is you're making a copy on OpenSearch, so your cost to performance will be higher.
But you'll keep your users happier because I don't
Yes,
wait 5 seconds for anything.
exactly. So when there is a use case where latency is of paramount importance, then this export option is one of the integration that S3 Vector Bucket has.
Cool.
So when I said export S3 vector index to OpenSearch vector engine, what it's doing is it's creating a new IAM service role, and that particular service role can read from the S3 vector bucket or index and then write into the OpenSearch serverless domain. And then it does a pipeline creation. So this is going to take some time, so I'm just going to let this run. This is one of the integration with OpenSearch that we have seen.
So when we do this, the data, the source of truth is still in the S3, what do we call it again? Vector
S3
S3,
vector bucket.
S3 vector bucket. And then we're copying it into another
Yes.
database? Why do we need copies?
Because at this point, you need that lower latency. So we are making two copies of it. One is for long-term storage. Think of S3 vector bucket for pretty much long-term storage, a slightly higher latency. Think of OpenSearch as very low latency, and your query speed is really fast. So when there is a use case where you put these videos on S3 vector, you've stored it there, but there is a need where you need to retrieve some of that data and have that queried very frequently, then you take that copy into OpenSearch to facilitate that.
Okay. So can you think of it, OpenSearch, kind of like a cache or something? Is it something like that or no?
No, so what it's doing here, there's like two OpenSearch ways, right? There's OpenSearch managed and OpenSearch serverless. So there's provision storage with OpenSearch managed, and what happens there is, let's say you have a lot of these vector databases and you have to query them very frequently. There's an active pipeline in place. Then you create this OpenSearch managed cluster and you control everything there. Whereas an OpenSearch serverless, basically it has no clusters or no nodes, and they use something called collections, and it's on-demand provisioning. So you can auto scale no matter as on a need basis, and it is pay per use for computing versus OpenSearch managed one, you have to pay for that particular cluster whether you're using it or not. So there's a lot of manual scaling in that process. So in this case, what we are doing is we can either have the S3 vector exported and then it just quickly run all your queries and then delete it, and then on a need basis export it again, run your query, delete it. That's one use case. The next use case is, let's say you want to keep your metadata on OpenSearch, because OpenSearch is the place to run vector database, right? Because it's really fast. So you create an OpenSearch managed cluster, and you keep your metadata on OpenSearch, but you keep the vector data on S3 vector. So even if your metadata is there on OpenSearch, you will still have that 100 millisecond latency. So it is a cost optimized solution you can have. And these are the two different integrations with OpenSearch.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so now let's go to how to do this with Bedrock.
Oh, yeah.
Do you work on Bedrock a lot, Candace?
You have to be at least a little bit familiar with it. And recently, I'm a specialist essay covering Q developer, Kiro, and now we're also talking about Agent Core and Strands. So I'm
Nice.
skilling up in Bedrock, kind of as we speak a little bit.
Nice. Nice.
So I cover all the fun things, it seems like. And people are always asking questions about Bedrock and creating new agents and things like that over in Bedrock. So
You're doing the fun thing. You must be like super busy.
Very, very busy. Even this week, we were just talking about this. Normally, after reInvent, things kind of die down. I feel like
Yeah,
we had too many amazing announcements, and it's been a busy week.
definitely. So we are on the console right now. So let's see. So as I mentioned, S3 Vector is integrated with OpenSearch, right? Both managed and serverless. The specific module that we saw is we exported it to the serverless. So whenever you want to have some faster query, you can do it. Right now, what we're seeing is integration with Bedrock. How is S3 Vector integrated with Bedrock, especially knowledge base? To do that, we go to knowledge bases here and then say create a knowledge base. And you say create knowledge base with vector store. So keep this default and create a new IAM permission role. And then I've selected Amazon S3 and click next. The data source, I'm going to keep it the default. And then master URI, right? So this is where my documents or my data is on the S3 general purpose bucket. So I'm going to browse this. I'm going to go here and I'm going to select the documents that I have that I need to convert. So we saw one way, which is S3 embed CLI from the GitLabs link. You can use that to convert your data to embeddings, or you could do it this way too. So here I'm doing exactly the same thing, but I'm coming through Bedrock.
And here is the link to that GitHub repo. So just in case anybody wants to check that out, you can go get it there.
Cool. So I selected the S3 bucket, and then, I'm going to keep the default parsing out here. I'm going to keep everything mostly default here. And then out here, when it comes to the embeddings model, I can say select model, and I'll go here, embed English version 3, apply. And then if you see here, I have something called vector store. Quick create a new vector store or use an existing vector. And here, as you can see, Amazon S3 Vectors is new. It was on the preview until now. Became GA at reInvent. So I'm selecting this. What it's going to do is it's going to create a new bucket, S3 vector bucket, and store those embeddings into the S3 vector bucket. So I click next and say create knowledge base. So this should take some time to finish. And once it's done, I will have to also sync. So this is your standard knowledge base creation. You've given your source data, and then you use any of the vector database. If it's not S3 vector, there's OpenSearch, there's other data sources that you could use too. And then we have it here. Created successfully. Syncing can take a few minutes and depending on, so this is not, I can't test it yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this and say sync. So it needs to finish syncing. Once it finishes syncing, that's when I have this activated. It's going to take some time here.
And these are documents that we're syncing right now. Did we
That
talk
is
about
correct.
what they are? What are these documents?
These are basically, I'll just open this up. So refund policy, shipping policy, warranty policy. So some standard documents we have in here.
Okay. And you chose Markdown here. Does it matter what file type? Okay.
No, it isn't. Well, let's save this. Sometimes it finishes quickly. Sometimes it takes a little bit. Okay, so the test knowledge bases come. So I'm just going to select this. So what I've done is when I'm testing the knowledge base, I can use this chat, but I have this data that I've provided for it to respond to me with, right? That is the key important part of RAG in the knowledge base. So here I'm going to select the model. You can choose whatever you like. I'm going to select Amazon Nova Pro. apply. And then everything else I'm just leaving it to default. So
So
let's
some
go
things
ahead.
that I like, just to kind of call out on a responsible AI kind of note for a sec, this is Bedrock stuff, but the guardrails,
Yeah.
very important to have in place. And isn't filters like where you can make sure that maybe we want to not talk about competitors or don't say bad words, things like that.
Yes.
Okay.
There's tons of configurations you can do here, but since we are focused, yeah, on with S3 vector, what we're doing with S3 vector with create, embed, and then query. That's what is the focus here at this point. But there's a lot of configurations that you can go and check. Oh. So based on my data,
Yeah.
it's giving me the response. So I just have a little data, but imagine when you have tons of data, tons of documents, and then all those embeddings are created, and then you're using that vector to search for some similar stuff, right?
And then each of the, yeah, that's what I wanted to see. The superscript. It takes you to where it's written. That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So where it's coming from, and how is it getting that data for us?
Super helpful. So you know it's not hallucinating or something like that.
Yeah. So
Cool.
let's do another one. What are the criteria that qualify for? And I'd say that the order was not delivered within 7 days. The order qualifies for automatic refund processing if it follows these criteria.
What if you ask it a question not found, like not found in your docs? Like,
I have done it. Give me a random question.
um, what kind of cat food should I buy?
How many cats do you have?
I have 0 cats. I have a dog. So I should not buy any cat food.
It's going to say I cannot find sufficient information.
Okay, cool.
Is that cool?
Yeah, that's very neat.
Nice. So this is how S3 Vectors is integrated with Amazon Knowledge, Bedrock, and Knowledge Bases. So at this point, the next thing I want to move on to is OpenSearch.
Okay. Yeah, because we were setting that up earlier and it had to do some things, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I already have a vector search cluster created here. And then during creation, I gave in S3 vectors as an engine option enabled. So you need to make sure this option is enabled. That's one of the key features for us to proceed with this part of integration. So then out here, I have something called the OpenSearch dashboard, right? So I can, click on this link. I'll come here. Let me just clean up some of this. So it's less stuff. All right. So then this is my OpenSearch dashboard for that particular cluster that we have created. Um, so you have two of them. This is a query editor is on the left and the response is on the right.
Will you make
That's
it just a little bigger?
Yeah. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So now I'm on OpenSearch, right? Now we are going to see how I'm going to create vector index on OpenSearch. And I'm going to put, create a vector index with S3 as a backend. So what I'm going to do here is, let me just clear this up. So I'm adding some category, some title to my index. workshop products index. So when I go into my original one, I have the workshop index. I'm doing a put vector here through OpenSearch.
Okay.
That's done. So it says that this is created. And now I'm going to add some sample vector data and verify. So basically, let me clear this up. So I'm going to add some vector data to this vector index. It's just educational data, like I'm giving some data about books, the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, that's a vector. I'm giving it the title and category, which is your metadata. I'm saying post it to this index.
So did you just make up those vectors, or is that
Yeah.
like, okay.
I just made up those vectors. Okay, so that created those, I mean, that put all those vectors into that vector index. So I have some data in that vector index. Now I'm going to do a search. So remember, my vector data is actually an S3 vector, but I'm doing this via OpenSearch. And that explains the integration between the OpenSearch managed cluster versus keeping S3 vector data, vector bucket as a storage option for OpenSearch.
Does it show latency on this page? Just so
Yeah,
that
it does actually. Here, can you see?
yes. Okay.
And that shows, right? But if you really run if the whole thing is on OpenSearch itself, your latency will be probably single-digit millisecond latency.
Okay. Wow.
So this is again a lower cost option where you keep your metadata on OpenSearch, but you keep your vector data on S3 vector bucket. So let me clear this. We saw a put. Let's try get. So I'm giving these three vector to do a get. So it's saying that it's essential data science techniques, learn the basics of artificial intelligence, and it took 865 milliseconds here.
Okay.
So if you see here,
So explain a little bit more too about like if I am a user and I would search computer science books or something like that.
yeah,
How does that my search get converted to what you have there on the left?
yeah. So what we are doing is we are actually doing K, here it is mostly using KNN, right? And then we are doing like, three search. And what I'm doing here is if you see K ID is 1,
Mhm.
that's my closest one because that's point 1, 0.2, 0.3. That's my closest one, and it's giving me the books Introduction to AI being the first one. My next document is Data Science Fundamentals. Where's that? Here. 0.2, 0.3, 0.4.
Okay.
So because we are asking you to find vectors closest to this. Now, if the vector was like 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, then that would not be your right fit. That's laid out here. And the ID is 6. Right? That's how you're finding it. What are the three search results that are closest that I need for this particular vector search?
Cool.
So are there any questions?
I haven't seen any coming in from the chat, which is interesting. Maybe everyone on the call actually has already used it. Is that likely? Probably not. Has anyone here used S3 vectors yet? If you have, put a happy face in the chat. Am I even calling it the right thing? My brain is not quite functioning all the way.
Yeah, it's
Amazon
called S3 vectors.
vectors. Okay.
The container is called the bucket. We can't let go of bucket. Everything is in a bucket.
Yeah.
So we call it S3 vector bucket.
Okay.
Yeah. So in this particular one, I did another query, right? In this particular one, there's two scoring methods. One is a vector similarity search, and one is a text search, right? Using a text, I'm saying machine learning specifically.
Okay.
And both scores are combined for final rankings. So I'm doing two kind of a dual search in this particular one. And you can do, you can add price to it, because price is also one of the option that we see in the result out here. So you can just add more stuff to make sure that you're getting the result, that accurate result that you want.
Nice. And this is how Amazon works. All of those different filters. I booked a trip on Airbnb. All of those become different filters that go into your database.
Yeah. So here I said, vector 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and I said title should match machine learning. So my first ID, KNN ID, was 1, and that's Introduction to AI. And it says learn the basics of artificial learning, intelligence and machine learning.
Is that the only one that includes machine learning in the description? Like, does it know AI and ML are kind of the same thing? Or would that be part of the
Yeah,
vector?
it's part of the vector. See, if you see ID 2, it has also machine learning basics.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
then the vector is 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. But whereas I've asked for 2, 3, and 0.2, 0.3, and 0.4.
Awesome.
Yeah. So let's try something more. Let's do the index mapping.
And what is this? What does this mean?
So it means, what similarity search is it doing? It's doing a cosine similarity search, and it's basically giving me a description of that index and what all it has with that index, right? The index is still here, but my d- vector data is in S3, and it's just giving me the result of that particular index.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah. It's saying my storage location is S3 vector. It's saying my similarity type is cosine similarity, and the text type is, title is text. Basically, it's giving me details about that.
So a little bit of our configurations and
Yeah,
those sorts of things.
yeah. If you look at any other, if you have multiple other vector databases on OpenSearch, and if you look at the engine will be different. It's like FAIS. There's an engine with OpenSearch that they use, but otherwise it's S3 vector. So as you're working on it, you know that if your backend is S3 vector or some other engine that you're using.
Okay.
Because the other engine, it uses the OpenSearch cluster, and that's SSD storage. Whereas S3 vector is S3, Amazon S3 vectors. So that is the architectural difference, and that explains the latency, the milliseconds that you see in here.
Cool.
Yeah. So how's that?
I think this is pretty interesting, and it's a really good base level. It's like revealing what's behind the curtain, kind of. Like
Right?
how does this actually work? So I think this is pretty cool.
So I have one more thing.
Okay.
Remember I did an export, and then I have to come to collection. So all that we saw up until now is through a managed cluster, right? Because everything is on OpenSearch. Now, at this point, what I've done is I exported data. I actually copied the data from S3 vectors into OpenSearch, right? I exported that data. Now, let's take a look at this one. Oh, did I close it? Oh, here, it's here. So I have that exported data, and that exported data is now here, sitting here. So if I go in here, this is my data that was exported from S3 vector. So when I did the indices, it's saying that it's giving me the timestamp, you know, from that export process, the name for reference, and all of those queries, like you know, what, how many doc counts that does it have, how many docs were deleted, what is the storage size of that particular vector, etc. All of that data is in here. So if you want, like, okay, what did I export out of that S3 vector onto OpenSearch? This would be a good query for you to see. Or let's say, give me some of the vector data, right? So timed out. Oh, that didn't come through. But ideally I should see all those party shirts and stuff like that in here.
What? Why did it time out? Do we need to
I
relog in or something?
don't know what happened here.
Oh, timed
Yeah,
out is false.
what
So it
timed
didn't
out is
time
false.
out. What did it do?
But it's not giving me the values.
Yeah.
So what it basically, why?
It's because all of your other pieces of the demo have gone wonderfully. You have to have it.
Something has to happen. Okay, let's try something else. Let's do a shirt. Yeah.
Weird.
It's going to bring me here anyways. So it looks like it exported the data. It's got only 3 files, so it should not be a problem.
We did get a couple of comments. Yes, Arabian Andy, this is live. Live demos always have a hiccup. They should have a hiccup. And then Sam is wondering if maybe it failed due to the excludes.
Exclude vector record?
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
No, not that. We're not sure.
It supports wildcard patterns.
Mm.
Also, when I put a shirt here. Let's try.
Who knows? Did it? I don't know. The engineer in me like definitely wants to like find the logs and like, did it really copy over? And
It did, because when I did the indices, it showed me the data it copied over, right? Yeah. Wait, let me try this here. I think I know what happened.
inval. Oh,
This should show me 3 because I was in the other DevTools. I had to open the DevTools from this serverless collection. So no. Let's try this. Yeah, it should give me an output. So it should give me an output if it is done. No. So I don't know if that thing is not completed yet. Did it show completed? It takes like 30, yeah, active. 1250. I might have to try it after some time too. Because what it typically gives when I do a CAD indices is it will tell me, you know, how many docs did it export, which is my 3 files. It should at least give me a 3-file list of 3 files out there. So it's not giving me anything, which means that export has not worked yet. Let's go to S3 vector. So this is the one. Let's go to the index. No. And then view exports to OpenSearch.
oh.
Oh, That's why.
It's not there.
Oh, I got timed out.
That's what I thought. A timeout.
What? I thought it did an import, right? Oh, that explains.
At least now we know. Mystery
Yeah.
solved.
Let me try it again. But it won't. It takes a while for it to export this whole thing. That's why I do it the first time,
So then we can come back to it at the end. Well,
and I
then,
can do this. So typically, what happens is, I'll have the same DevTools dashboard, the query, and I can query there saying that, okay, show me the three documents that you have ingested, and it'll give me those file names or what it is.
well, that's what it should have happened. Good enough.
Yes.
I don't think we'll have time to see that in our last 8 minutes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. When you say it takes some time, is it 30 minutes?
Yeah. Which is why, I kind of do it right at the start.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
not
And
so
I'll let
bad.
it run. Yes.
One live demo hiccup. It's all good.
Oh, with
Interesting.
collection ID. Okay, so is not authorized to perform. What happened? Create a new service rule. Hmm.
Wow.
I don't have I haven't created one, so I need to troubleshoot this.
No worries.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was a very informative and helpful session. I did learn a lot. Like I said, it's kind of like revealing what's behind the curtain. So I think that it was very cool. If anybody has any questions, we do have, about 5 minutes left. We may just drop a little bit early, but feel free to drop any questions here or maybe a key thing you learned. Just let us know kind of what you thought about this.
And if anybody has dabbled in S3 vector, like they just tried it out at least, or played around with it, or do you think there's a good use case for you in your organization for S3 vector? I'd love to hear about all that.
We always like to hear what people are actually doing with these tools. As specialists, we often, advise people how to do things, but we don't always hear how it actually went. So
Yeah.
we love to hear back from you.
Yes.
We'll see if anything comes in. This is actually our last episode of the year.
Wow.
Just doing some housekeeping sort of thing. So we've been back here on Twitch and YouTube since I think it was July. So half the year. So we have
Nice.
plenty of episodes that people can go back and watch.
Are they all on YouTube or are they all on Twitch?
Both. So
Both.
we're on
Nice.
the AWS events channel on YouTube, as well as twitch.tv/AWS.
Nice.
So yeah, a little bit of everywhere.
Nice.
And this year we've done things around S3. We've done some Bedrock, especially Agent Core. We've had a couple of episodes on Agent Core. I talk about Q Developer /Kiro quite a bit because that's what I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
So go back and find some other videos to watch while you're enjoying your downtime in the holidays.
Absolutely. This was so much fun. I hope it was helpful because there's a lot of interest on S3 vectors. Imagine having all of those videos that you're not wanting to query all the time and you don't want to pay SSD storage costs for it. This is a great option for those use
Perfect.
cases.
Awesome. I am going to take down your screen. It looks like we didn't get any other questions coming in.
Questions.
Any other tips or tricks you want to share, Fatima, before we drop?
Nothing more specific that I thought about. No, I mean, there's something called S3 tables too. I'm just sliding that in, but no, that's about it, I think. That's all I
Awesome.
had.
Okay. Well, I would say that a lot of this material is also available in a workshop that didn't you
Yeah.
author that as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah.
Um,
We had a team who did that.
Well, it's just called, it's in, I'll post it in Twitch and then show you all the links so that we can see it together.
Yeah.
Um,
And we had this released at reInvent, so do check out our workshop.
so here it is, the link to the workshop. It's got a nice short name, S3 Vectors. And so you can go and find tons of different workshops that we have available there in catalog.workshops.aws. But this is where most of this one came from today. So with that, Fatima, thank you so much for being on the show with us
Thank you.
again. I think it went really well, learned a lot of things. My dog is in here, that's why I'm a little distracted over this way. And happy holidays to everyone. I hope you enjoy the day, the week, the weather, all the things.
Absolutely. Happy holidays, Candace. It was great hosting this with you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. We'll see you more next year.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.